I think we do need an inquiry into what happened, and I have to say I listened carefully to the Taoiseach's opening statement, and I broadly welcome the Taoiseach's opening statement. I do think that the Taoiseach strayed unnecessarily into politics right at the start. I do think it was an unnecessary tone to open with, but certainly I felt the Taoiseach got the balance reasonably right. Now, there's a few things we already do know. We've had 3 reports. We've had the 2010 report from Klaus Regling and Max Watson, and they looked into the macro situation, the institutional conditions that led to the crisis. We've had the 2010 report from Governor Patrick Honohan. He looked at the regulatory failings of the central bank. And we've had the 2011 report from Mr. Peter Nyberg, who looked at the policies and practices of the banks, of the public authorities and the auditors that drove the country towards the bank guarantee. So I hope that we're not going to spend too much time there, because there's a lot of things we don't know, and I think there would be great value to us do knowing. There are a lot of questions to be asked about the specific events and failures leading up to the guarantee. The Cabinet, the Department of Finance, indeed the Dáil. I noticed one thing that is absent, I think, from both the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach's opening statements was the role of the Dáil. There's a lot of reference to the Cabinet and the government of the time, but let's remember that we here in Dáil Éireann are constitutionally obliged to hold the Cabinet to account. So the Dáil, I hope, is looked at as well. There's questions around what the Dáil did, and of course foreign actors, the ECB, foreign governments, foreign banks. I'd very much like to see these things discussed. We don't know what the rationale for the guarantee being so wide is. Whatever about a guarantee being offered on the night, I think the public is very interested, I'm certainly very interested, in the nature of the guarantee and why it was so wide, why it went backwards. And thirdly, I think there are an awful lot of unanswered questions around the rationale for continuing with the guarantee, something Governor Honohan raised. He concluded broadly he could see a rationale for a guarantee on the night, but it was inexplicable why such a broad guarantee would be implemented year after year after year, and I think therefore it is very, very important, and this of course really is the payments to the bondholders, that the rationale for that, for both the previous government and this government, is examined as part of this inquiry. I think there could be an awful lot of public value to be had from this. Now, it's entirely possible that this inquiry is going to fail. There's many members in here are going, we're going to spend an awful lot of time on this. And it's entirely possible we'll fail. It's entirely possible that this will descend or be taken off track by political point scoring, by political bickering, by people trying to defend or attack. And I think the timing is very unfortunate. I think bringing in a banking inquiry in year 4 of this government is a huge mistake, because it's entirely possible that this banking inquiry will push very close up to the next general election. And then it's going to be very, very difficult for people not to get political when you potentially could have ex-senior Fianna Fáil ministers, current government ministers in. So I think the timing is unfortunate. I think this should have been held two years ago. However, I am pleased to see the representation on the committee. I have worked with several members of the committee. I know other members of the committee. One area which wasn't covered, and I don't know who the 2 senators are going to be, but certainly I hope, in terms of putting the right skill set on it, that Professor Sean Barrett is still being considered. I know he was looking to do it. I think it would be a great shame. Obviously, it's a decision for the Shannon, but I think it would be a great shame for the Oireachtas not to take an offer from a professor of economics to sit on a banking inquiry. So I hope that Professor Barrett is still being considered. Now, the banking inquiry could be incredibly useful. I actually sat down to write a piece on the banking inquiry with an ingoing bias that it would be a complete waste of time. And I sat up very late at night and really tried to challenge my thinking. And actually, the piece I wrote said the opposite. I convinced myself at about 2 o'clock in the morning that it could work. Not that it will work, but that it could work. And there were a few areas, I found 4, where I think we could see, if we all pull this off, real value for the future. I think we hopefully will be able to show the need for transparent and accountable government, civil servants, civil service and regulators. I think we will be able to investigate and may be able to show the need for a parliament which really does hold the executive to account as per the Constitution. I hope we can examine Ireland's case for retrospective recapitalisation. This can be very important because we can look at whether or not there was deception from the banks, as per the Anglo tapes, where a policy of entrapment certainly was suggested, and we can investigate whether or not there was much foreign pressure put on the previous government, put on this government, to pay bonds, to honour guarantees and so forth. And I think we can look too at the level of potential culpability of the banks in the mortgage crisis. It's one of these questions. We've talked about whether or not they abandoned prudential lending. Some of them have said they have done that. So I think there are many areas where we could succeed. I think we have potential. But of course, I think many people expect us to fail. And I took a look this morning in preparing for this speech at the trust barometer. The Edelman Trust Barometer looks at the level of public trust in a bunch of different countries, in business, in institutions, in government. And last year, Ireland came 6th from the bottom. And this year, we came 3rd from the bottom. So only Poland and Russia score worse than we do, which means only the Polish and the Russian people have less trust in their institutions than the Irish people. And that was before the recent revelations around the administration of justice in this country. So maybe we've fallen below Poland or Russia, who knows. But it's a pretty bleak situation. This is independent comparative analysis that says there has been an almost total collapse in trust between the Irish people and the institutions, and this, the Oireachtas, obviously is one of those key institutions. So I think people expect us to fail. I think people expect us to descend into bickering and political opportunism, and I hope that that doesn't happen. And I'd like to suggest two things to Minister Keogh to finish. There are two things I think the government could do to at least set this on the right footing, maybe consider before the motion is voted on. One is to add an 8th member, a non-government senator or TD, to deal with the government majority. The government majority, rightly or wrongly, has a lot of people thinking this is a setup because they can outvote the non-government TDs and senators on the issue. So an idea, maybe add one non-government person, which de facto gets rid of any lack of trust. And the second is another quite simple one, which is I wonder, could not just the government parties, but also Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin, publicly state that they are removing the whip from their members on the committee? I think that might be a very powerful signal. I know and work with a lot of the members on this committee. I have great respect for the people who are on this committee. So I wonder, Minister Keogh, if you might take it to the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach and see if the government parties at least would say publicly that there is absolutely no whip to be applied on this, and let your designated members do the best job they can on behalf of the country. Thank you.
Thank you. No.